Alright guys, so this Saturday, February 10th, we have UFC 221 that's going to be going down. It's going to be headlined by a middleweight interim championship fight between Luke Rockhold and Yoel Romero. Now, as always, I'm going to be giving you guys my main card predictions. But before I get into the picks, I just want to apologize for missing the last two fight cards. I did not make a video on the Brunson and Jussier card, as well as the Eric Anders and the Lyoto Machida card. And the reason being is the first card I missed this year was because of college. I had tons of homework and I go to work. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it in a video before. But I do go to school and I do work, so I was really busy. And then last week I didn't get to make a video on the Anders card. It was because I got sick with the flu, and I still have a little bit of a raspy throat, and I still have a minor cough. But I'm back. I'm ready to give you guys my predictions for UFC 221. Now, it's not the best card. It is not a great pay-per-view card, especially for casual fans. A lot of people may not necessarily know a lot of the names on this card. But there are some entertaining fights, especially the main event. So without further ado, let's get into these fight predictions. Now, for the first fight, we have a light heavyweight bout between the 13th ranked light heavyweight in the world and Tyson Pedro. He's going up against Saparbek Safarov. Now, Safarov is relatively new to the UFC. He made his UFC debut back in 2016, so it's been over a year since he last fought. Now, he was 8-0. Before he made his UFC debut. He did lose his last fight against Gian Villante. He is a solid striker, and from what I understand, he is a solid grappler. I haven't seen much of his tape. I haven't seen many of his fights, but I did watch the fight against Gian Villante, and from that fight, I was able to understand, or I was able to grasp that he is very reckless. Now, although he does have power, he did land a couple shots on Villante, and a couple of those shots did seem to hurt Villante. But every time that he threw a jab or he engaged in some boxing exchanges, he has a tendency to lean forward and leave himself very vulnerable. And Gian Villante did do a good job of countering, landed a couple clean shots. There was a few times where Safarov threw some wild head kicks, and twice, they actually caught the elbow of Gian Villante, which hurt the shin of Safarov. He leaned down, was grabbing his shin, and caused them to just backpedal and allow Gian Villante to be the aggressor in that fight. Eventually, in the second round, Villante hurt him on the feet. Safarov didn't look like he had anything. It looked like he just gave up. His back was against the cage. Villante was landing uppercut after uppercut before the ref eventually stepped in. Now, it was not an impressive debut. His fighting style is not impressive whatsoever. He's very aggressive, very sloppy, and he's going up against Tyson Pedro. And Tyson Pedro is coming off of a loss. He did lose to Ilir Latifi. He just didn't really have an answer for the takedowns. Although he did have some success on the feet. He was the longer fighter. He was the taller fighter. Has some nice kicks, some strong leg kicks. He has a nice jab as well. And we did see him utilize that in that fight against Ilir Latifi. Now, Latifi's takedowns were just a bit too much because Latifi is a very strong guy. He's very athletic. He's very explosive, and he's very fast. So he also was able to have some success on the feet against Tyson Pedro and came away with the decision victory. Now, Pedro, like Safarov, was undefeated before that loss. He was a hot prospect in the division. A lot of people were expecting him to beat Latifi and establish himself as a top 15 light heavyweight in the world. It didn't go down that way. That fight against Latifi was a learning experience that Tyson Pedro needed. He is a well-rounded fighter. He is a strong grappler. He's solid on the feet. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. Of his 6 professional fights, 4 of those wins come via submission. So that definitely goes to show that he can finish the fight on the ground. He also has power in his hands. So in this fight against Safarov, I just think that Tyson Pedro is the more polished fighter. I do think that he's going to come in here. I think he's going to show that he's much more sound in his techniques. He's better all around, in my opinion. I do think that Safarov is going to come in and be aggressive like he was against Villante. If he's smart, he's going to show some patience and maybe even try to chop up the leg of Tyson Pedro, attack the body, just do something to slow Pedro down, because Pedro is a very strong guy. He does like to put pressure, consistent pressure at least. But like I said, I just think in this fight, Pedro is the better fighter. He's more well-rounded. I do think that eventually Pedro will be able to get the fight to the ground and be able to lock in a submission at some point. I just don't see any way that Safarov can win this fight. And for that very reason, I am extremely confident in Tyson Pedro, or in picking Tyson Pedro in this fight via submission in the second round. Now, next up, we have a welterweight bout between Jingliang and Jake Matthews. Now, Jake Matthews is a guy that used to fight in the 155-pound division. He had lost 2 in a row before eventually moving up. Now his last fight against Bojan Velickovic was his first fight in over a year. That was last November. So he's going to be fighting against Jingliang, who is a very, very, very tough fighter, a very tough welterweight. But Matthews himself is no slouch. He is a very strong wrestler. He's good boxing, seems to be in pretty good shape. And at 170 pounds, he does look very, very strong. He does have a lot of muscle mass. He looks way bigger, obviously, than he did at 155 pounds, obviously, because it's a heavier division, but he looks stronger. Now, although with that weight gain, I'm not sure if his cardio will be the same as it was in 155 pounds. It was pretty solid against Bojan Velickovic. I mean, both guys did seem a little bit gassed. But it is understandable because Jake Matthews does like to put pressure. He likes to push forward, get your back against the cage, and take you down, wear you out. And he's just constantly on top of you. He's constantly pressuring you until he's able to knock down or get that takedown. So he's very consistent in terms of being able to put pressure. He is aggressive, and being aggressive in his last fight got him the victory, in my opinion, because Bojan Velickovic was having some success on the feet, landed a couple kicks, was attacking the leg, landed some solid shots to the chin of Jake Matthews. And that's one of the things that Jake Matthews does really need to work on is his defense. He does take quite a bit of hits. His defense is not that good. We saw that in his last fight. Now, for this fight, he's going up against Jingliang, who is on a tear right now, right? He's won 4 in a row. He's hot, right? He has all the momentum. And in those 4 victories, he's beaten some solid competition, including the likes of Bobby Nash, Zach Otto, as well as Frank Camacho. Now, Jingliang, right, is a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a really good wrestler, but he's also a very good kickboxer. He does have some strong leg kicks. And in that fight against Frank Camacho, in the first round, Camacho was able to wobble Jingliang a couple times in the first round, wobbled him badly to the point where it looked like the ref could have stepped in at any moment. He was wobbly on his feet, but he stuck through it, right? He has a chin. He's very tough, and he fought through it. Now, when he recovered, he was able to land some solid leg kicks to the legs of Frank Camacho. Really hurt Camacho badly, and as the fight went on, he continued to attack the leg. And then once he slowed down Camacho, once he saw that Camacho was starting to feel drained, then he opened up with his boxing. He started landing a couple clean combinations, and as a result of his game plan, right, and the execution of his game plan, he was able to come away with a decision victory. Now, in his last fight against Zach Otto, Otto is a guy who moves very well, right, very fluent with his movements. Was trying to attack the body early, attack the legs of Jingliang, because Jingliang doesn't move that well. He's a bit of a stationary target. He does have the tendency to get hit as well, as we saw in the Camacho fight. So Otto was doing a good job of attacking the legs, attacking the body, but Jingliang was able to land some clean counter right hands. And on the third one, he caught the kick of Zach Otto. He caught the leg and landed a clean counter right hand that dropped him and then eventually finished the fight. So this guy is another very well-rounded fighter, and because he does have a lot of wrestling experience, and because he is a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu like Jake Matthews, I think it's going to be a little bit harder for Jake Matthews to get Jingliang to the ground the way he did Bojan Velickovic. Now, it is very possible that the pressure, and the pure strength of Jake Matthews may be an issue, because he does look to be the physically stronger guy. He may very well be able to get Jingliang to the ground and hold him there and really just ground and pound him, keep him on the ground and earn a decision victory by doing so. But I think that it is going to be very hard, like I said earlier, to get Jingliang to the ground. He's very well-rounded, very tough. He has the momentum right now. He's been fighting at 170 pounds, so he's experienced in this division. He's in shape too. In the Camacho fight, even though it was a 3-round fight, even though it was a slugfest, even though it was a war, he was still very composed in the 3rd round. He was still very active as well. So he is in very good shape. Now, Jake Matthews isn't really a threat on the feet. It's his wrestling that Jingliang is going to have to be aware of. But I think he'll do a good job, fighting at range, attacking the leg of Jake Matthews early, attack the body, establish the jab, and do all these things in order to make sure he keeps Jake Matthews at range, and fight him with a certain distance in between, because he does not want Jake Matthews all over him, and that's what Matthews is going to try to do. I just think that because he's more well-rounded and because he is a strong wrestler and because he is the better fighter on the feet, I'm going to have to pick Jingliang to win this fight. I'm going to pick him to win this fight via TKO in the 2nd round. Jake Matthews has been TKO'd before. Kevin Lee TKO'd him in the 155-pound division, and Kevin Lee can't box to save his life, but he has power. Jingliang also has power, so I think that he is going to catch him in the second round. I just think that he's going to continue to pour on combinations once Jake Matthews is not able to land the takedown. Even though it's very possible, I'm not counting Jake Matthews out, and this is not a fight where I'm completely confident in Li Jingliang, but I just think that because he's the better fighter and because he's the better striker, I think he's going to land more consistently on Jake Matthews. He's going to do a good job of stuffing the takedowns, and I'm going to pick him to win the fight via TKO in the second round. Now, next up, we have a heavyweight bout between Cyril Asker and Tuivasa. Now, Cyril Asker is a very strong wrestler, and one of the things I noticed in his past couple of fights, well, more particularly his last fight against Hu Yaozong, he just likes to be aggressive. He likes to put pressure. He doesn't really throw anything to set up the takedowns. He'll throw a jab here and there. He'll throw in a hook, a wild hook, but he does have the tendency to lean his head down. And once he puts pressure on you, once he gets your back against the cage, all he's going to do is shoot for the takedown. He's a really good wrestler. He's going to get you to the ground. And out of his 9 professional wins, 3 of those come by submission. His last fight against Hu Yaozong was a victory that came by rear naked choke. He was able to get the submission in that fight. But that's all he's looking for. He's looking to get your back against the cage, take you down to the ground, hold you there, and eventually either look to ground and pound you, hold you down for 3 rounds, or sink in a submission. Now, as for Tuivasa, he's a guy that just made his UFC debut back in November of 2017. He is undefeated, so the UFC is looking at this guy as a potential top prospect. Now, he did look good in his UFC debut, although it was against Rashad Coulter, who's not necessarily a top contender or anything like that, right? But he did look impressive. He's a really good boxer, and he's not the most athletic guy, but he is very relaxed. He did look very relaxed in his fight against Coulter. Seems to do a good job of picking his shots, and he does have power. He's currently undefeated, as I believe I mentioned earlier. He's 8-0. All 8 of his wins are first-round knockouts, and 4 of those knockout victories have come in 44 seconds or less. So this guy knows how to finish fights, and he knows how to finish fights early. So if I'm Cyril Asker, I'm doing everything that I can to get this fight to the ground. I mean, that's all he ever really does in any of his fights, or at least any of the fights that I've seen from Asker. Now, in Tuivasa's last fight, it was a very funny finish because he did land a clean leg kick to the leg of Coulter. Seemed to have hurt him. It was what dropped him. And as Coulter was trying to get up, right, his back was against the cage, and Tuivasa just threw a flying knee that clipped Coulter on the chin, knocked him out cold. So it goes to show that he has more than just power in his hands, right? He threw the flying knee. He did show some strong leg kicks in that fight. And I just think that if Cyril Asker is not able to get this fight to the ground, early on, he's not going to have a chance. I haven't seen much of Tuivasa's wrestling, so I'm not sure how he fares there. I haven't seen much tape on him. But if he's able to land a couple shots to the chin of Cyril Asker, he's going to knock him out cold, because Asker was knocked out by Walt Harris, who was the more athletic, who was the faster guy, the better striker, right, the better boxer. And I think in this case, Tuivasa is the better striker as well. So I think that he's going to land one early on him. I think he's going to make it 9 straight victories that have come in the first round. I think he's going to knock out Asker in the first round with rather ease. So I'm going to pick, as I mentioned, Tuivasa to win this fight via first round knockout. Now, next up, we have another heavyweight bout between Mark Hunt and Curtis Blaydes. These are 2 of the top 15th ranked heavyweights in the world. Now, as for Mark Hunt, right, he is a knockout artist, right? That's one thing that he is notorious for. He's knocked out multitudes of people in that division. Obviously, he doesn't have the best record. He's 13-11, but he has power in his hands. I mean, one shot is enough to knock you out cold. He's knocked out Frank Mir. He's knocked out Derek Lewis. And that's just to name a few people on that list. Now, he does have power. He can land the uppercut. He can land the hook. He has a strong jab as well. Mark Hunt is not athletic, though. He's not athletic whatsoever. He doesn't move well. He is vulnerable to getting hit. He's been knocked out. He was recently knocked out by Alistair Overeem, who landed a couple clean knees to the face of Mark Hunt, because Overeem is the taller, the longer fighter, right? A very good Muay Thai practitioner, the better overall striker. Mark Hunt is just a good boxer who has tons of power, that has enough power to knock you out with one shot that he is able to land. And he does land rather precisely. He doesn't just headhunt, like some of these other fighters do. But Curtis Blaydes is an athletic fighter. He is a good boxer. He has fast hands. He is in pretty good shape. He's 3-1 in the UFC. One of his fights was a no contest, but he's 3-1. His only loss comes to Francis Ngannou. And anytime you can eat a shot from Francis Ngannou and not get knocked out cold, you're a tough guy. And he was able to do that. He did get wobbled a couple times. His eye was swollen badly going into the third round, right? At the end of the second, going into the third round, the doctor said that he couldn't see, so they had to stop the fight right there. It was a doctor stoppage. And, but he wasn't out cold. He ate Ngannou's best shot, and was still fighting, and he still wanted to continue fighting. So he's a tough guy. I think in this fight, Curtis Blaydes' athleticism and I think his boxing skills are going to be a bit too much. I think in order to beat Mark Hunt, you just have to be able to move around for all 3 rounds. And I think Blaydes is in good enough shape to be able to do that, to pick him apart at range. And I think Mark Hunt will land a couple shots. I just don't think they're going to be clean enough to knock Curtis Blaydes out, cold, the minute the first shot lands. I do think that they're going to graze him. I think Blaydes is just going to do a good job of defending, keeping his hands high, moving around, making sure that Mark Hunt is chasing him around. And once Mark Hunt is gassed out, then I see Curtis Blaydes, opening up with some combinations and landing consistently to the chin of Mark Hunt, because Mark Hunt, is very hittable. As I said, he's been knocked out before. Now, another way to beat Mark Hunt would be to be able to get him to the ground, and hold him there the way Brock Lesnar did back at UFC 200. Now, it's easier said than done because you have to be aware of the uppercut, getting hit with the uppercut on the way in. Now, if Curtis Blaydes can be able to get the fight to the ground, whilst avoiding those big shots from Mark Hunt, I think he can get him to the ground and hold him down, right? Land some ground and pound, because like I said, Mark Hunt is not athletic. He doesn't move well on the ground. But I think the safer option for Curtis Blaydes to win is to box him at range, right? To keep moving, keep circling around Mark Hunt, make him chase him, and I think that's what Curtis Blaydes is going to do. I think I'm very confident in picking Curtis Blaydes in this fight, although there's always that chance of Mark Hunt knocking him out. I just don't think that he's going to be able to do it on a guy that moves as well. And also somebody that is as long as Curtis Blaydes. Curtis Blaydes is going to have an 8-inch reach advantage in this fight. So I think if you add all those things together, I think the safer pick would be Curtis Blaydes. I think Blaydes will do a good job of moving around, waiting till Mark Hunt gasses out, and then opening up with the boxing and landing some combinations in the third round. So I'm going to pick Curtis Blaydes to win this fight via TKO in the third round. Now, in the main event of the evening, we have the middleweight interim championship bout between Yoel Romero and Luke Rockhold. Now, obviously, the champion, Robert Whitaker, is out. He was sick. He was hospitalized for some time. So prayers to him. I wish him a speedy recovery. Hopefully, he's able to step back in the octagon very soon. Now, these two gentlemen, right, who are very established fighters, two very great fighters in the middleweight division, they're going to be squaring off for the interim belt and the next crack at the current champion, Robert Whitaker, when he does come back. Now, Yoel Romero is very explosive. He's a freakish athlete, especially when you consider the fact that he's 40 years old. I mean, this guy's a great wrestler, right? He's a former Olympian, very explosive, very athletic. He's known for the flying knees, power in his hands. Although he's not, the best boxer, although he doesn't really have the technique of some of these other guys in terms of boxing, he's powerful, and one shot is enough to hurt you and hurt you badly. But he's a great wrestler, like I keep saying, a freestyle wrestler. At that. So he's very slippery as well, very hard to take down, very hard to keep on the ground. Whereas Luke Rockhold is a very well-rounded fighter. His boxing seems to be, a bit of a weakness. I don't want to say that he's a horrible boxer, because he can definitely strike with his hands. Although he is known for his kicks. He has some solid kicks, especially when throwing kicks to the body, throwing kicks to the leg. He moves well. He doesn't have a chin on him, though. He's been knocked out a couple times. He was the former champion. He dominated Chris Weidman to win that belt. And then he was knocked out by Michael Bisping in his first defense. And Michael Bisping took that fight on 2 weeks' notice. Now, although it was more so Luke Rockhold's arrogance than Michael Bisping's skill, that won the fight, he still lost the belt and he still got knocked out. Vitor Belfort also knocked him out. So he doesn't have a chin. But he is a very good fighter. He's a strong wrestler. He trains with Daniel Cormier, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Cain Velasquez. He has some of the best training partners in the world. He trains with some of the best fighters in the world in their respective divisions. Former champions, perhaps future champions, and current champions. So he definitely comes from a great gym. And like I said, he doesn't have the best boxing skills, although his boxing is solid, right? I don't want to completely say that it's a weakness. He's a solid boxer, but overall as a striker, he's very good, very talented. Wrestling on the ground as well. So this is a tough fight to pick, man. I think that Luke Rockhold obviously is the more well-rounded fighter. I think he's in better shape. He's in excellent, condition. He's always in shape, strong cardio. Whereas Yoel Romero does have the tendency to get gassed once it comes to the third round, the fourth round, and the fifth round. Now in the interim title fight at the time against Robert Whitaker, he landed a clean kick. It was more like a push kick. Like he kind of pushed, on the knee of Robert Whitaker, and that's what hurt him, and Robert Whitaker said that if Yoel Romero would have landed another clean kick, that would have been done. He would have fell to the ground, and quite possibly the fight would have been over. But Yoel Romero didn't stick with it. He tried to land a couple flying knees. He tried to land a couple of, strong hooks and overhands, but nothing really landed. And Robert Whitaker did a good job of fighting through the pain, moving around, making sure Yoel Romero was gassed. He even landed a couple takedowns towards the end of some of the rounds. And I think the boxing, right, the striking at range from Robert Whitaker really won him that fight. So Yoel Romero had an opportunity to be crowned the interim champion and eventually the middleweight champion after all that happened with GSP and Michael Bisping. But he didn't get the win in that fight. This is another opportunity for him to lock up an interim championship and another shot, at a rematch with Robert Whitaker. Now, although he can win this fight because he's very strong, because he's athletic, and because of his power, he can land a shot on Luke Rockhold. I just think that Luke Rockhold, being the more well-rounded fighter, because he's in better condition, I think he's going to do a good job of avoiding, all the power shots of Yoel Romero early. I think he's going to move well. In his last fight against David Branch, he was coming off of a little bit of a layoff. Branch was putting the pressure, landed some clean shots. It looked like they hurt Luke, but he fought through it in the second round. He was able to get a takedown and just dominated David Branch on the ground, landed some clean ground and pound. And I think he can possibly do that to Yoel Romero, although Yoel Romero is one of the best wrestlers in this division, is extremely slippery, extremely hard to take down, let alone hold down on the ground. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think that if Rockhold can do a good job of attacking the legs, attacking the body, with punches and with kicks, and just draining the energy out of Yoel Romero before he drains himself, I think he's going to have a legitimate shot to be able to win this fight, if he does a good job of moving, which he usually does. And that's going to be interesting to see if he can continue, what he did against David Branch in that second round, because he did get off to a slow start, although it was coming off of a layoff, like I mentioned earlier. But I do think that Luke Rockhold is going to get this victory. I think he's more motivated. I think he's hungry, and I think he's overall the better fighter. I do think it's going to go the distance, and I think because it's going to go the distance, because it's going to be a long fight, it's going to go, it's going to play in favor to the former champion, Luke Rockhold. So I'm going to pick Luke Rockhold to win this fight. It is going to be a very close competitive fight. I do think Yoel Romero, his wrestling obviously is going to be a big threat, his explosiveness, but I just think that Luke Rockhold is going to come in here prepared. He's going to come in with a game plan to be able to neutralize all the strengths of Yoel Romero, and I'm going to pick Luke Rockhold to win this fight via unanimous decision. He's going to earn the title of interim champion, and he's going to earn the next shot at the current champion, Robert Whitaker. Now, if you like these predictions, make sure to hit the like button down below. Make sure to comment. Let me know who you think is going to win in the main event and in all the fights on the card. Make sure to follow me on Twitter as well so I can keep you updated on my video postings and things like that. So like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and make sure to stay tuned for more content.